Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to write about self-improvement. Now, self-improvement is a key part of many professional degree programs, and generally speaking, a good thing to keep in mind no matter what your professional aspirations are, because things are constantly changing. The world does not stay the same. Your personal, professional, family situations do not stay the same. Now, when it comes to writing about self improvement, a lot of people have been trained in their previous life and professional experiences to not place themselves at the center. And while a good goal of having the writer and the reader being able to focus on the process, this can sometimes be confusing as to who is doing what and if you're describing yourself or someone else. And in APA 7th edition, which we use in our programs at ACU, there are particular ways to go about doing this to clarify who did what and when you're referring to yourself. So we're going to delve into that today. Briefly, if you are not familiar with the Online Writing Center, we work with students through a variety of channels, including webinars such as this, through appointments where you can sign up for asynchronous appointments, meaning you schedule a time by which you will upload your paper and we will send you feedback within 24 hours. It's not, say, Easter weekend. And real-time appointments where you sign up for time and then you join us at that time in a phone call or a Zoom session, depending on your preference. Why might you pick one of these appointment types versus the other? Well, one of the virtues of an asynchronous appointment is you can work right up to that time, send in your paper for feedback, and go to bed, which for some students is how they maximize their efficiency, as opposed to working to the last moment, having the appointment, falling asleep, trying to remember the next day what they decided they were going to do. And also, some students will plan this out so that they will send a draft before they go into work, and then they will plan on receiving the feedback and looking at, say, the following lunch. So part of it is a question of what suits your workflow the best. But you might also have some questions that you would prefer to ask in real time, to be able to ask follow-up questions, or hear a more dynamic unfolding explanation or demonstration than you would get if you were just writing things via email or notes and appointment form. Now, we've got lots of resources on the Writing Center website, including more videos like this, including paper templates and sample papers. And one of the things I want to point out to you is that we have the sorted course guide. So if you are, say, taking a class in the higher education program, you can look and see all the classes that we have that have webinar tie-ins. All right, you'll see me referring to the APA course paper template now. If you're watching this on video, I do recommend pausing to download a copy of that, but I will also show you a download link right before you see me start using it. All right, so we're going to start with talking about how to write about yourself. And then we're going to specifically look at this in the guise or in the task of writing about self-improvement in this assignment from the Higher Education course 672. Week 4, Assignment 1, Leadership as an Influence, and we're going to finish with outlining and drafting. So let's dive in. Now, specifically writing about yourself, you can understand that as how to write in first perspective in APA style. First person would be like I statements, my things, as opposed to you did this or they did that, which would be second and third person perspective respectively. All right, so some reasons why you might use first-person perspective. Well, first is if you're discussing research, personal and professional actions, things that you've done. And when you want to refer directly to yourself, or in some situations, when you're writing about your co-authors and co-researchers, in which case you would use we or us, to clarify who did what, and to avoid anthropomorphism, which is when you attribute human-like qualities to something that is not. So the study didn't do it, the people in the study did it. And one of the key aspects of this is that there are many automated processes that are used in workflows that guide decision making now. And so when it is something where, for example, an algorithm or a model is making the decision or producing a conclusion, it is very helpful to differentiate versus it is presenting the data from which someone, such as yourself, goes and makes the conclusion. This is especially true in some environments like stock market trading, but also in things where a lot of purchasing things, exactly what vendor is sometimes selected by automated systems. So telling who did what, who is responsible for the decision or the action is very helpful. Now, if you're writing about a personal belief or a personal action, it's going to be the same sort of construction, using personal pronouns like I and my, such as I believe that. I define this as. My personal belief is that. And for your actions, I am currently working on, I've asked, for example, 2 workers to be accountability partners for this. Now, if you're going to be writing about yourself, well, unless you happen to have had some published source document what you've been doing in that published format, you're not going to be including any citations for that. But if you are clarifying what you're doing or how you did it, certainly. So, for example, in this example here, I've been working on following the 7 steps of leadership cultivation listed by Blackhand. So, which 7 steps? Oh, those listed by Blackhand. So in this case, the citation isn't providing the main information for the sentence. It is providing an explanation for what you're referring to for what you've been doing, or the specific steps that you've been doing. Now, often people who have been who've used other style systems besides APA 7th edition, including the earlier APA 5th edition, which was in use for about 20 years, will think that you're not allowed to use passive voice at all. APA style discourages the overuse of passive voice, but it does not prohibit it. So a common case is you have a paragraph, and in the first sentence, you identify who did it, usually yourself. I have developed this. And then to keep the focus on the work that was done rather than I did this, I saw this, I observed this, I wrote down, which is kind of distracting with all those sentences starting with I. If you have the first sentence use that first person perspective, I have developed, and then you use passive voice, the focus will be this will be tracked, or if past tense describing something that has already taken place. I started the plan. The first step was completed at this. The second step consisted of. So those sentences after the first one are passive voice because they're not stating who did the thing. But if you've already done that, if you've already stated who's accomplishing the action in the first sentence of the paragraph, that's fine. And so that's how we're avoiding the overuse of passive voice, which is only problematic when we can't tell who is doing what. But if you state that at the start of the paragraph, not a problem at all. So let's look at how these might manifest in Hied 672's Week 4 Assignment 1. So this is coming from the Leadership in Higher Education course. And this starts out by saying, okay, you need to read a chapter in Thriving in Leadership, and you're going to revisit this chapter and create a 600 to 900 word future-oriented paper detailing what steps you might take to become a person of influence within your organization. And you're specifically supposed to include a couple things. Specific examples of what you might do to orchestrate influence at your current or future organization. So not just where you are now, but where you want to be or plan to be. Specific areas within your organization that would receive your focus, and potential benefits to your organization from the things that you are proposing. Now, the paper is not super long. It's 600 to 900 words, which is roughly 2.5 to 3.5 pages. Using the template, double spacing, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, it's going to be around 250 words per page. This is the body of the document, not the title page or references. So around 2.5 to 3.5 pages. And just a reminder to use APA style. And we check the notes here. All right, demonstrates an in-depth understanding, appropriate use, and correct implementation of theories, concepts, and/or strategies presented. Now, if we look at the other items, it's kind of, okay, have you written well, and have you done everything asked for in the assignment? But look at that first one. In-depth understanding, or appropriate use, and correct implementation of theories, concepts, and/or strategies. Now, although that's written as and/or, I would really recommend that you look at suggestions and/or as being requirements, because the person grading this paper is going to have the rubric in mind, and if they can look and says, oh yes, they did that, that, and that, and check all of them off, that makes it very easy to make the decision, yes, that should get full credit. As opposed to, well, okay, they didn't talk about strategies, they did talk about theories and concepts, did they do it enough? Well, it's something where you can kind of stack the deck by doing all those well. All right. So this is the point where we move on to outlining and drafting. So if you don't have a copy of it already, now's the time where I'd recommend grabbing a copy of our APA course paper template. Now I've gone ahead and grabbed a copy of our course paper template here, and the first thing to do is to fill in the title. Now a question often comes up, what should you title the assignment? And in APA style, there's a system of priorities here. First is that the title be accurate. The second, that it be reasonably concise. And only after that do we start worrying about it being creative. So if we look at this assignment here, this is called Leadership as Influence. We have Wake for Assignment 1. It's not inaccurate. It's not problematic at all if you just take the title of the assignment and make it the title of your paper. Now, if I'm starting out with this, I might want to spell out week there, but week for assignment 1, Leadership as Influence paper, not a problem. Is it creative? No. Is it descriptive? Yes. Is it reasonably concise? Yes. There's no doubt about what this is. Now, if I go around filling in the rest of this info, that will make sure that I don't forget it before I submit things. And now on to the main body of the paper. So we want to make sure we have the same exact title here. So if you're copy and pasting this from the assignment text, we want to make sure that it is exactly as it was earlier. All right, now there's some placeholder text. I'm just going to delete this really quick. And placeholder references are now out. And so let's look at what we know we are going to be using in this assignment. Now, the instructions tell us one source that you're absolutely supposed to use, the chapter Orchestrating Influence in the book Thriving in Leadership. So before you even begin to start planning out the assignment, you know that's something that you should be citing. Because it's something you're going to be citing, that should absolutely be in your references list. So, all right, well, if we go look in the syllabus, we will find that we have a couple things here. So, Dr. Longman's book here, Thriving in Leadership, Strategies for Making a Difference in Christian Higher Education, it's got a bunch of extra information that is helpful for finding and ordering the exact book, but not actually supposed to be there for a reference entry in APA style. So the city and publisher information, that hasn't been required since APA 6th edition. We're using APA 7th, so take that out. The ISBN number, same thing, as well as the electronic access information. We don't need that here. We also want to reformat that title so that it is in sentence case, is which is how it should be formatted for the reference list. And let's go ahead and look at that. So if we take the information as it appears in the syllabus, cut it down and reformat that title into sentence case and we use italics for the title, we end up with this much more concise entry. So, all right, let's go ahead and add that to the references. All right. And let us also go ahead and start looking at what the instructions tell us to use here. Now I've gone ahead and copy and pasted the instructions here. But remember, there's that one additional piece of detail in the rubric. So we want to make sure that you also include this. And we're just going to make this match the text here. All right. So let's take a look at what we have to do here. So as a organizational aid, I recommend using the cross-out tool, the strike-through tool, to cross off things that won't affect or won't directly affect what you put into the outline. So in this case, the preamble saying that you're going to be using Dr. Longman's book, cross that out. And for this assignment, revisit the chapter, cross that out. And this be sure to include, we've got the items there as our list, so cross that out. And then now we have the capacity to start really planning. Now you could delete this if that makes it easier for you. Some people will also use the highlighter tool and go ahead and mark something off, say in black like that. And they find that that helps them focus better, whatever works best for you. So if you're going to do that, mark that off in black. And now we start looking at what you might be writing. And I'm going to go ahead and remove these italics here so that we have the regular text here. And then anything I add will be in italics. So let's see what we would do. Well, the first thing is you have this organization here, so let's clarify who we're talking about. And as you're just looking through this, I recommend writing placeholder reminders to yourself. Because you know from this, you're going to be describing what it means to become a person of influence. So where did you come from? Where are you heading? So who or what do you describe yourself as now? What do you plan on doing? What is your goal to become? Which, according to this assignment, is going to be a person of influence. So make sure you use the same wording as the prompt. And tell us, okay, what is the organization you're in now? What are you doing there? And what do you plan to do? And there are a couple of different ways that you could describe that, but one of those is say, okay, when I become a person of influence, here's what it's going to be looking at in terms of the type of position that you have, perhaps a department, the administrative level. All right, specific examples without even reading the chapter. You know, this is asking for several examples, so you can go ahead and give yourself some placeholders here. Specific areas within your organization that would receive the focus. Now, you can certainly have more than 3, but 3 is listing, that's kind of minimum expectations there, so good place to start. And then if you develop those in more detail, great. So let's talk phrasing. how would you discuss one of these examples? And this goes to that whole first-person perspective versus what you will be describing in passive voice after you've already gotten the details of what you're describing out of the way. So if we look back at our slides there, remember, if you identify who or what is doing the action in the first sentence in a paragraph, you can then use passive voice to keep the focus on the action after you've clarified who is doing what. So in this case, examples of this, okay, let's say that you plan on assuming a committee leadership position. So you can start out with the short version in your outline and then start drafting sentences. I plan to become chair of at least 2 organizational committees. So, as you can see here, in this example text, the first sentence is saying, oh, I plan on doing this. Now, if we want to align this even better with, say, the instruction to say provide specific examples, then we want to make sure that our text aligns with this. Now, it might be a case where you add some extra text for this one to lead us into that. And then you can align your wording here. And whatever it is, list it, describe it, tell it's important, perhaps some steps along the way, and then fill those in for all 3 or however many you are going to ultimately be describing. And one of the benefits of describing this in your outline is that you may decide that some of them are harder to write about or less compelling than others, and so you decide, or perhaps you have more choices than you can fit into the word space. You can pick the best or most illustrative examples. And as you fill this in, you'll find that there's some things where you can just start writing immediately because you know what's going to be going in there. So, for example, describing potential benefits to the organization. Now, don't forget about this part here. So this is your reminder that you should be discussing not just your plans, but also how to ground it. And that includes making references to Dr. Longman's book and also to going through and saying, okay, what are specific things that I've encountered other places? Are there professional practice guidelines? Are there specific theories? And so go ahead and add additional step. We're going to summarize this with grounded by. And that can take many forms. For example, these were ID'd in an institutional report. Oh, this one, and as you add these different notes, you can certainly include citations for them. Or if you don't have the citation immediately in front of you, you can leave a placeholder to yourself saying, oh, add a citation here. And so when you go ahead and do the reading or reread your way through the assigned reading, you can be looking for those little details that will help you ground and supplement your arguments. And again, to review the list, to demonstrate an in-depth understanding through detailed discussion, appropriate use, and implementing theories, concepts, or strategies. So that don't just say, I'm going to use this, or this is in my... Okay, well, what specifically? So because it emphasizes this thing, what will you do next? Or what will you make sure to monitor, for example? All right. Now, this isn't a terribly long paper. I mean, this is 2.5 to 3.5 pages. So one of the goals here is to find out exactly what you need to do and what you need to write about in order to fulfill all the prompts, and to clarify, again, how this comes back to becoming a person of influence. So when you finally reach the conclusion, you should have a plan that says, okay, here's some specific steps that I'm going to take. Here's why I'm taking those steps. Grounded not just in what you desire, but also in what the reading says is important or efficient or helpful or necessary for your organization. And whichever of those that you do, make sure that you are not just saying, oh, this is needed for it, but tell us how you know that by including citations. That's a good point for us to wrap up today, so let's just do a quick recap of what we've been talking about. So we began with the question of how to write about yourself, or in more detail, how to write in first-person perspective in APA style. We continued with discussing the specific assignment that requires you to explore how you will increase your influence as a leader in your current organization or a future one. And we finished with looking at the specific instructions for the assignment as they relate to building a developing outline. That is to say, an outline that you expand as you go, so that you will gradually get more and more specific as you fill in the requirements, and then eventually turn that into full-on sentences and paragraphs to form a cohesive essay. Make sure that all those sources that you cite end up in the references list. Make sure that you don't wait till the end to add those. The ideal thing is that you know, here's some of the things that you need, so as you are doing the reading, you say, aha, there's one of those things. I know exactly where I'm going to use that in the outline because I started my outline already. And to fill that in, and then have everything you need. If you have additional questions, please feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. You are more than welcome to schedule an appointment or visit the Online Writing Center website. And with that, I'm going to say thanks for being with us. Have a good night.